Good morning, Year 6. I hope you all had a lovely weekend and are looking forward to another week of home learning. Now, before I begin today's lesson, I would first of all like to say a massive well done to every single child in Year 6 who uploaded exceptional pieces of writing last week. Now, today is our final diary entry as Francis, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what you can do. But first, I'm going to share my screen with you and we're going to have a look at a few excellent pieces from Friday. Okay, first of all, I want to start off with Lean's work. And if you look at this really carefully, you can see that Lean has written the words edited and fixed. And that's because in a previous post, Lean received some feedback from one of her teachers about her writing, and then she re-uploaded and took that feedback into account. So really well done, Lean. You can see up at the top, I've highlighted in pink the words something or someone. I love the way, Lean, you used empty words to hide the threat, and build the suspense. Again here, she's used a little short phrase and repetition, louder and louder, which also builds up the suspense. And then finally, she pondered what it could be or what she saw. She said maybe a couple of sticks and fallen leaves in the water, nothing else. And then a short, really short sentence at the end, which adds to the drama. Great job, Lean. Dia, what a fantastic piece of writing. Well done. I love the way you started with a rhetorical question and you directly addressed the diary. Have you heard it too? And then really short sentence afterwards to quicken the action. That knock again. Just like Lean, Dia has also used empty words. It was as if someone or something was brave. And then directly after that, she's used a really effective rhetorical question. But what? And that gets the reader thinking what the danger could be. Really well done, Dia. Moving on to Nathaniel's work. Nathaniel from Kent class has really improved in his presentation since the beginning of the week. And I love the way, Nathaniel, you also began with 2 rhetorical questions. Now, I think you meant to actually, you did squeeze a little question mark in there. I actually thought you had forgotten to include that, so well done. 2 rhetorical questions to start us off. What was that? Did you hear that? Excellent work, Nathaniel. And you've managed to consistently keep it in the past tense throughout too. Really well done. My eyes were drawn to the bottom sentence, left me feeling really intrigued, Nathaniel said. It was not a something, but a someone. So the use of empty words again, and it left me thinking what that danger could be. Great work, Nathaniel. Now, we're going to have a look at this example. Tense is tricky, as we know in these entries, because Frances is in a boat, but she's also trying to explain what's happened and articulate her thoughts and feelings. So she's doing lots of different things at different times, and we need to make that really, really clear in our writing. So I'm going to read through this example for you. Huh? Did you hear that? The knock came back again, but it was even louder. Not as in loud, the type of loudness you would hear if somebody was knocking on a door. I think you get it now, diary. I look around to see if anything was there, but I saw nothing. I tried to call for help, but every time I call for help, the knocking gets louder and louder. I shake in fear. Pause, have a think. I've highlighted 2 sentences in green. What's the problem with those 2 sentences in green? Great, you're right, they're not written in the past tense. Let's zoom into this sentence. I look around to see if anything was there. Have a think. What should that sentence read in the past tense? Well done. That should say, I looked around to see if anything was there. Or you might put an adverbial in front of it and say, just a moment ago, I looked around to see if anything was there. And here, instead of saying I shake in fear, this actually, when you're talking about feelings, as we discussed the other day, you would probably use the present tense I'm shaking in fear. Okay, because that's what she's doing at this moment. And you can shake in fear and write in your diary at the same time. So the present tense would be okay to use in this context. However, you could also say, when I saw it, I began to shake in fear. So that would be the past tense. So please be really careful with our tense. Mostly it is correct otherwise in this piece, but there's just those two little edits to make. And again, I wanted to look at this example. I love this work, Nadira. 2 short sentences to begin with. Some children started with 2 short questions. You can also start with 2 short sentences, just as effective. I heard it again. Another knock. I'm drawn in immediately. However, this time it was more louder and harder. Miss Love has highlighted the phrase more louder in green. Have a think. Why is it not correct to say more louder? Yes, you're right. When you add on the ER suffix to a word, that means more already. So for example, if I add on ER to the word fast, it becomes faster, and that means you're more fast than anybody else. If I added it on to the word slow, the word becomes slower, and that means you're more slow than anybody else. So if I add ER onto the word louder, that means the knock is more loud than anything else. So I don't need the word more there. You could instead say, this time it was more loud, or just stick to louder. But you don't need ER and more. They both mean the same thing. I'm going to read on. I'm scared to look over my boat because something could come out and eat me. Perfect control of tense there, Nadira. Well done. Right now, I am just sitting and praying that this nightmare will go away. So Nadira has there spoken in the present tense, which is fine because she says she's just sitting and praying that will go away. She's not looking over the boat at the same time. However, she continues, so I forced myself to get up and look. This is in the present tense. Can you write in the diary and force yourself to get up and look at the same time? Have a think. Yes, you're right. That wouldn't be possible. What tense should that be in? Excellent. My turn. Past tense. Great. That needs to be in the past tense. So time's moved on a little bit. You were sitting and she was praying that this nightmare would go away. And then a little while later, she's decided to force herself to get up and look. So you might say there instead, I've just forced myself to get up and look. Or a moment ago, I forced myself to get up and look. So being really careful with that tense today and thinking about when it would be more appropriate to use the past than the present. Overall, really excellent work, and it's been really great to see how children have improved day on day. Also, so impressed with the number of children who continue to edit and repost their work. We know that responding to feedback makes us even better learners. So really well done, team. Now, let's look at what we will be focusing on today. This will be our final paragraph of Frances's diary. We are going to be learning to use foreshadowing techniques today in our writing. My turn. Foreshadowing. You might be wondering, what does foreshadowing techniques mean? Well, foreshadowing is a type of literary device in which a writer gives a little hint of what is to come later in the story. So in our writing today, we are going to be using different techniques. So for example, rhetorical questions in order to give the reader a little bit of a hint of the danger that is to come. And then hopefully by the end of our writing, we will have given enough hints so that the reader can infer what's happened to Frances. And then there is something else you might do at the end of your writing. I will save that to our model, for our model piece. Okay, so if you foreshadow effectively enough, your reader will be able to develop enough knowledge so that they can make an inference, almost like a guess based on your hints. We're not going to tell the reader exactly what happens because that doesn't help to build the suspense. We're going to give them lots of hints along the way. Right, we are now ready to begin today's paragraph, but first we're going to watch the Frances video one more time. And this time we're going to watch it from the start to the finish, to the end, sorry. I really want you to bear in mind what Frances might be thinking and feeling today as she begins to try and row away, but isn't successful. Please pay careful attention to what she does just before we find out she is no longer with us. Let's have a look at the video now.
When I was a kid in the suburbs of Chicago, adventure meant Quetico Provincial Park, up on the border of Minnesota and Canada. The name implies the place was small, but Quetico was a 1,000,000-acre nature preserve, so big you could go days and days without seeing another soul. We would go on camping trips up there, weeks of canoeing and portaging, seeing bears and moose and deer, sleeping under star-soaked skies. The park was isolated and so pristine, you could actually drink the water straight from the lakes. But I won't be going back to Quetico anytime soon. Not after what happened to a girl named Frances Brandywine. Frances was 17 at the time, black-haired and with a reckless nature, determined always to leave the well-trod path, to break new ground and be alone. A few years ago, Frances was up in Quetico with her family. They were in a remote part of the park, camped on the shore of one of the deeper lakes, a lonely body of water carved millions of years ago by a passing glacier. The deep part of this particular lake was rumored to be about 300 feet. One night after her family went to bed, Frances took the rowboat out, planning to find a quiet spot in the middle of the lake, lay on the bench of the boat, look up at the sky, and maybe write in her journal. So she left the shore, rowed for about 20 minutes. And when she felt satisfied that she was over the lake's deepest spot, she lay down on the bench and looked up at the night sky. The stars were very bright, and the aurora borealis was shimmering like a neon lasso. She was feeling very peaceful. Then she heard something strange. It was like a knock. She sat up, guessing that the boat had drifted to shore and run aground. But she looked around the boat, and she was still a half a mile from shore. She leaned over the side to see if she'd hit anything, but she saw nothing. No log, no rocks. She lay back down. She told herself it could be any number of things: a fish, a turtle, a stick that had drifted under the boat. She relaxed again and soon fell into a contented reverie. She had just closed her eyes when she heard another knock. This time it was louder, crisp, like the sound of someone knocking hard on a wooden door. Except this knocking was coming from the bottom of the boat. Now she was scared. She leaned over the side again. It had to be an animal. But what kind of animal would knock like that? 3 quick, loud knocks in rapid succession? Her mouth went dry. She held onto each side of the boat, and now she could only wait to see if it happened again. The silence stretched out. A few minutes passed, and just as she began to think she'd imagined it all, the knocks came again, but this time louder. She had to leave. She lunged for the oars. She got them in place and began rowing. The water was very calm, so she should have made quick progress. But after rowing feverishly, she looked around, and she realized that she wasn't moving at all. something was keeping her exactly where she was. Again, she tried rowing. She rowed and rowed on the verge of tears, but she went nowhere. She stopped.
This part is really key because today we're going to have to write in the diary when she realizes, we are going to be writing when she realizes she cannot move. Something is keeping her where she is. Now, obviously, she's not writing in the diary at the moment, but we're going to imagine that she's tried to row and she cannot move, and then she's went straight to her diary.
She was exhausted. Her heavy breathing filled the air. She cried. She sobbed.
In fact, it's probably at this part here that after trying to get away, after lunging for the oars and rowing feverishly, we know that means frantically because she's really panicked, it's probably at this point here that she goes to her diary.
Soon she calmed herself again, and the boat was silent again for 10 minutes. Then 20. Again, she tricked herself into thinking she'd imagined it all. But just like before, just when she was beginning to get a grip on herself, the knocking came again, this time as loud as a bass drum. The floorboards of the boat shook with each knock. Now she was so shaken, she started making questionable decisions. The first was to lower one of the oars into the black water, trying to feel if there was some landmass, even some creature she could touch. As soon as the oar broke the water surface, though, she felt a strong, silent tug at the other end, and the oar was pulled under. She screamed, she jumped back, and now she had no options. All she could do was sit and hope and wait. Wait for the morning to come. Wait for whatever was going to happen to happen. The knocking went on through the night. She passed the time writing in her notebook. And it's only because of this notebook that we know what happened that night.
Again, really significant. The knocking went on through the night. There are so many key pieces of information to take account of there. She prodded her oar into the water and it was pulled away. The knocking was as loud as a bass drum. The knocking shook her boat. All of this detail can be in your entry today. So we're building up the suspense one little bit at a time, giving lots of hints at what is about to come, providing enough information so that the reader knows the threat is nearby. Okay?
Frances can't tell us. She was never seen again. The boat was found on shore the next day.
Okay, and it seems to me that our video has just paused there. So let's try it one more time and see. Okay, we're just going to pause the video. We know at the very, hopefully your internet will work a little bit better than mine, but we have seen this video lots and lots of times, so hopefully we're confident with what is coming up at the end of it there. Right, we are now ready to start today's diary entry, but if you want, I would recommend taking another look back at today's film, today's video. Frances's, what the details that were included in the Frances video, because that will provide you with lots of ideas of your own. So you could jot down some of those phrases and integrate them into your diary. So have another watch if you want to gather more detail. We are now ready to begin then our independent write. Okay, we are ready to begin. You can see I have written today's dates, Monday the 11th of January, and whilst we are learning to use foreshadowing techniques on my page, so please pause the video now and do that. Great, well done. Now, you may have noticed there was a lot that happened at the end of that video, so we really need to think carefully about what Frances would have written in her diary. This is the final diary entry before something happens to her, so we need to think really carefully about what we're going to include in that. Now, there is no doubt that she hears the knocking again. In fact, since the last time we wrote, she's actually heard it twice. She heard it first and she tried to row away, and then she heard it again, and it was so loud that time that it began to shake her boat. So my first step to success is she hears the sound again. It will be up to you whether you decide to write she hears it and then she tried to row away and then she heard it again, and then you will talk, and then at that point you might talk about how loud it was and how scared for your life you were, or you might just go with she heard it once. I'm just going to say, I'm going to put it all together and say how I've heard it again one more time, okay? And I think that way it's easier to manage the tense. So I'm imagining myself that I've picked up the diary one more time, having been shook around in the boat following a series of really loud knocks. So I'm going to start off by saying, another knock. In fact, this time, there were several. Several means more than one. Another knock, short dramatic sentence to begin with. In fact, this time there were several. Louder than a bass drum. I'm going to include that because she mentioned that in the video, or the narrator mentioned that in the video. But you also might say, so loud they shook my boat from side to side. Louder than a bass drum. Bass is a funny word because it sounds like it should be spelled B-A-S-E, but it's actually spelled like bass and pronounced bass, or bass when I say it in my English accent. Louder than a bass drum. And then I'm going to include a little bit about her feelings because there was no doubt she was incredibly scared at that moment. And I know that when I'm talking about her feelings, I can talk in the present tense. I'm going to say, not I'm scared, I want to make it slightly less obvious than that. I'm going to say, I don't know how much longer. I don't know how much longer I can take this diary. How much longer? Or you could say, I can withstand this diary. I don't know how much longer I can take this diary. And that direct address to the diary as well shows just how desperate you are. So please try and stay away from, I'm so scared, I'm terrified. Try and use your show not tell if you can. So I've heard the noise again, and this time I'm incredibly scared. Let's see if I've achieved that purpose in the first paragraph, or the first part of the paragraph. Another knock. In fact, this time there were several. Louder than a bass drum. That is an example of a little bit of foreshadowing there. You're given a little hint that if something's louder than a bass drum, then it probably is more than a stick that's making that noise. It probably is a creature at this point. I don't know how much longer I can take this diary. So at this point she becomes really, really desperate and panicked. Step number 2 then, we are going to talk about her unsuccessful escape, really. Unsuccessful means it didn't work. Attempt to get away. I'm just going to say attempt to escape. Escape is probably not quite the right word, but try to get away from the danger is what she's trying to do there. So I need something that flows on from that, and I need to remember that when she was trying to escape, she was rowing away, she was prodding her boat, or prodding her oar, that means sticking her oar into the water. So that means that she won't have been writing in her diary at the same time. Therefore, I must write in the past tense. My turn. Past tense. Great. I'm going to start by saying then, I've tried rowing. I've tried rowing. But the boat, and in brackets you might there say, I've also tried sticking my oar in the water to have a feel around. My oar in the water to have a feel around. But, comma, why I'm using the word but, because it didn't work. Let's read back and check what would flow on. I've tried rowing. Instead of saying also there, I'm actually going to say even. I've tried rowing. I've even tried sticking my oar into the water to have a feel around. But the boat just doesn't seem. I've talked about putting my oar in there, and I've talked about trying to row away. So therefore I'm going to say, but nothing seems to work. But nothing seems to work. But nothing seems to work. And I've decided I'm going to use a semicolon there to link my two clauses. I've said nothing seems to work, so I'm going to explain why nothing seems to work. I'm going to write that in pink. It needs to make sense. The boat doesn't move. The boat doesn't seem to move. And I'm actually going to use repetition here for emphasis. The boat doesn't seem to move, and the knocking doesn't seem to stop. Let's read back then that paragraph from the beginning. I've tried, or that step from the beginning, sorry. I've tried rowing. I've even tried sticking my oar into the water to have a feel around. But nothing seems to work. The boat doesn't seem to move, and the knocking doesn't seem to stop. And you can see there the repetition of that phrase, seems to, is really effective, and it emphasises to the reader just how serious the situation is. Now, we talked about foreshadowing at the beginning and how foreshadowing can help to give us a little bit of a hint of the danger that's coming up so that the reader can start to infer. So here I'm going to use two rhetorical questions to foreshadow, to give a hint of the danger. So I'm just going to star these for you so you can see them, and I'd really love to see what rhetorical questions you come up with. I'm going to say, so I've said the boat doesn't seem to move and the knocking doesn't seem to stop. So now I'm going to give a hint that it's probably a creature holding her, holding the boat down. So I'm going to say, but what kind of creature? But what kind of creature would do that, diary? Again, directly addressing the diary, because that shows desperation and that shows that she's longing for the diary to help her. But what kind of creature would do that, diary? And again, I'm going to use some repetition here. What creature could stop a boat from moving? And you can see that my questions are directly relevant to the fears she has discussed. So she said how she can't seem to move, and then the questions, the rhetorical questions, help to foreshadow that. Okay, let's read that back from the beginning then. So the purpose of this paragraph, remember, was to convey just how scared Frances was and to foreshadow, to give some indication of the danger so the reader could begin to infer what has happened this paragraph. So let's read back. We started with our dramatic short sentence. Another knock. In fact, this time there were several. Louder than a bass drum. I don't know how much longer I can take this, diary. So in this part, Frances's desperation should really be coming through. And as we know, she tried to get away. You could even say up there, my boat is shaking. I'm shaking, my boat's shaking, and there's nothing I can do about it. Unsuccessful attempt to escape. I've tried rowing. I've even tried sticking my oar into the water to have a feel around. But nothing seems to work. The boat doesn't seem to move, and the knocking doesn't seem to stop. What kind of? I actually don't need but there, because it's not the opposite. I'm just thinking out loud. What kind of creature would do that, diary? What creature could stop a boat from moving? And then finally, our final step is really key, because sadly we know that something has happened, Frances. So what's caused her? And this is a really hard bit to manage. This step, number 3, is perhaps the most important one. It's the fatal last look. Now my class will know what the word fatal means, and actually some of you will remember it from the other classes, from the stabbing of the dragon. My turn. Fatal. Fatal means that if something is fatal, then it has caused you to die. So that last look, we can infer from the video that it has caused Frances to perhaps, not be with us anymore. We don't know for sure that she's died, but we can infer that by the fact that the last entry was written with a bloodied finger, that perhaps she's not with us anymore, but we don't know for sure. But it was that last look that sealed her fate almost. So, how are we going to manage this then? Well, we're going to almost take a little jump in time. So I'm going to do 3 more stars here, which indicates a little time hop. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because she will have had to have that look before she writes in her diary again. So, she was, the last time we spoke, in her diary, or in her boat, shaking in fear. And now, time's moved on, she's had another look and she's came back to her diary. And she's seen something. She has just seen something. And she knows, perhaps, her fate is sealed at this point. So I'm going to say, I'm so sorry, diary. I'm so sorry, diary. Why she's so sorry? Dash. The temptation was just too much. So I want the reader to infer there that she's had another look. The temptation to look was just, I don't even need to say to look. The temptation was just too much. Or, I'm going to put a slash here because another option is, you could say, I just couldn't help myself from having another look. I just couldn't help myself from having another look. From having another look. In fact, I'm not going to say from having another look because I'm going to put that into my next sentence. I just couldn't help myself. All I did, so what did she do? All I did was look over. All I did was look over, past tense, look over the side of the boat, or the edge of the boat maybe. Look over the edge of the boat once again. And I'm sure, so this is the part where we know this is her final act, so watch really carefully to see what I'm going to do here. All I did was look over the edge of the boat once again, so she's obviously seen something that's really, really scared her and terrified her. She feels more threatened than ever before, which is why she's apologising to the diary. She's saying, I just couldn't help myself. I shouldn't have done it. I know I've made a huge mistake. I promised you I wouldn't do it and that I would stay calm. All of that language should be coming through in this bit. But I did it. The only option now is to wait and see what happens. So look really carefully. All I did was look over the edge of the boat once again. And I'm sure I saw it move. And I'm going to stop there. And I'm sure I saw it, and I wanted to say, I'm sure I saw it move. But have a think. Why have I stopped there? What do I want the reader to think? What's happened? Yes, you're correct. I want the reader to think that as Frances was writing that diary, she perhaps was taken or grabbed by the creature. I want the reader to think that Frances was not able to finish that entry. And it would be great to see if you can include something like that as well. Now, I also want to show you what today's challenge is. And I want to show you 2 examples from children in Year 6 last year. If you feel like you've achieved this part really, if you felt confident writing this last part, then I'd really like to see if you could have a go at this next bit. But first, let's read it all together through first. Her final diary entry. Another knock. In fact, this time there were several, louder than a bass drum. I don't know how much longer I can take this diary. I've tried rowing. I've even tried sticking my oar into the water to have a feel around, but nothing seems to work. The boat doesn't seem to move, and the knocking doesn't seem to stop. What kind of a creature would do that, diary? What kind of creature could stop a boat from moving? Time hop before she takes so she's taken the fatal last look. She's went over the edge one more time. We've jumped forward a little bit in time. I'm so sorry, diary. I shouldn't have done it. I couldn't help myself. The temptation became too much. I knew you told me not to. All I did was look over the edge of the boat once again, and I'm sure I saw it. And at that point, she's lost her life. And I'm sure I saw it get closer. And I'm sure I saw its shadow closer than ever before. Or you might even finish, or you could go on a little bit further and you say, will I ever make this out? But don't quite finish the sentence. Now, here's your challenge. Can anybody switch to write as the person who's responsible for the disappearance of Frances at the end? We saw in our video that Frances's diary at the end had been an entry had been written with a bloodied finger, and I wanted to show you what two children from my class did last year in different handwriting. After Frances had written her final entry in different handwriting, this child has written, I don't think so, but don't say I didn't warn you. Now that might seem a little bit random, but you can see if you read further up in this child's entry, they started by saying, I guess the only option now is wait until sunrise and again and try to get away again. And then the person who's responsible for her disappearance has come in and said, I don't think so, but don't say I didn't warn you. So a really powerful ending. They've grabbed the diary and they've finished it off. And again, and I love the way these children have sort of written in messier writing to imply that it's a creature that's perhaps came from the sea. And this child was just about to tell the diary who it was. Fine, it was and at that point they were taken. Ha ha ha. Foolish girl, you figured me out. Your wish is my command. You will be alone forever. I warned you, Frances Brandywine. So let's see if anybody can manage today to include an entry from the person who Frances has been so scared of throughout. I cannot wait to see your final diary entries. It's been such a pleasure to read each and every one of them, so I can't wait to see what you come up with today. Let's see who can challenge themselves to make sure it's in that informal tone, using some foreshadowing techniques, rhetorical questions, past tense, suspenseful short sentences. I'm confident you can do it, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with Year 6. As always, get that work on Seesaw so your teachers and I can give you some feedback. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.